from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much once again for listening to Talking Catholic. We are recording here on the day before the first day of summer. So, hello, I'm Pete Sanchez. I'm here with Mike Walsh. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. Now, we're recording the day before the first day of summer, but they're going to be listening to it 7 days from now, right?
Yes. So we are officially in summer.
That's right. They'll be a week into summer at that point.
Yes.
I will be, let's see, at this time next week or today, as for the listeners, I will be sitting in a hot, sweaty campsite surrounded by roughly 1,000 Boy Scouts. 5 days into my son's first Boy Scout camp down in Maryland. Aren't I lucky?
I think you are. Do you have your bow and arrow and your hunting knife ready to go?
I do have my hunting knife, and I do not will not be bringing my bow and arrow, though I do have one. But I think that by Thursday of next week, I think they will actually be in rifle training or some sort of gun training. So it should be fun.
That's well, I was thinking. I remember when we had Father Joe Byerly on. He talked about his knives.
He does have knives. That is
so. True. Is he going with you?
No. This is just the Boy Scouts. So
okay.
Although there will be a few representatives of the Catholic Scouts from the Diocese of Camden who will be there, as a matter of fact. So it should be fun.
Oh, the big. We just had. Well, after this has been recorded, there will have been the Scouting Mass.
I know. Jack is going to. He's getting an award to the Scouting Mass.
Congratulations, yes. Jack. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's getting the... I can never remember that. It's Latin. I can't remember what the name of the award is. But he's getting it for his... he completed it before he made the transition from Weeblos to Boy Scouts. But he's getting his pin. Yep.
And he's going to stay in and to become a Boy Scout?
Yeah, he's officially a Scout right now. A Boy Scout right now.
That's that's better than me. I left. I got my Arrow of Light, and then I was out.
Yeah, but he got his Arrow of Light in April, and but his pals are still in it, and he wants to hang out with them. So they're all going to be.
That's cool.
I will be in a cabin. He will be in a tent with his buddy Joseph, and his other buddy Ryan is going to be there with his buddy Raylan. So it's 3 guys from school and 1 guy from Scouts. He's very excited about it.
Don't tell me you're in charge of these 1,000 kids.
No, from what I understand.
Thank
Did
God.
Get introduced, by the way?
Yes, no. Thank you, Mary McCusker. How are you? That's what you just heard. The lovely dulcet tones of Mary McCusker.
Yeah,
I'm just horrified at the thought of you being in charge of 1,000 kids with knives and rifles or whatever you guys were just talking about.
I am very pleased to say that I am in charge of nothing. I am going as a parent. From what I'm told, the other parents in previous years basically do a lot of napping. You are encouraged you're encouraged to interact with the kids, but you're encouraged to help them be individuals and learn on their own and fail on their own and stuff like that. So I plan on bringing a couple of books.
And snacks, because you wouldn't stop complaining about how far the food area is from your cabin.
It is a 30-minute walk from the cabin to the canteen.
So when the listeners hear this, just picture Mike all trudging, sweaty and gross walking to get something to eat.
Well,
which also is, by the way, what I look like as I'm walking to my kitchen, sweaty and gross.
No, see, I'm thinking of, I don't know if anybody remembers the show. It was a Saturday morning cartoon, early 90s. It was called Camp Candy. It was John Candy, the voice of Camp Candy.
Fun.
And he was like a camp counselor, and he had his khaki shorts and khaki button-up shirt on and high socks. And this show, it was just funny. And the theme song is in my head now for Camp Candy. Listeners, if you go to YouTube and Google Camp Candy, John Candy sang the theme song to this animated show. And does anybody know what I'm talking about?
No
I know
idea.
John Candy.
I know John Candy. I don't know what you're talking about. But that image is exactly what I will look like without any Scout paraphernalia on. But yeah, high socks, boots. I think I have green shorts as opposed to...
Nice.
I can't find any camo shorts that fit me. I'm very upset about that. But yeah, so that's what I'll be doing next week. Pete, you're going to be off next week as well.
Yeah, I'll be down the shore. I will be down the shore, maybe playing mini golf by this time, or hopefully not getting burned. I intend to put as much sunscreen on myself as I am able to after we had Nicole Kiefer on telling me that what a type 1.
Mm-hmm.
She scared the heck out of me.
Yes.
So
you will immediately turn red.
I know. I don't even tan. I burn. Mm-hmm. So pray for me, everybody.
Which is unusual for people of Cuban lineage.
Exactly. Yes, but thank you, Mom, for the Scottish-Irish side. I love you very much, but could you have had darker skin? Anyway,
I lucked out. I'm one of the few members of the family that got the Italian skin, so I rarely burn, or at least it takes a lot for me to burn.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I know. I'm also tall too, so that's helpful too. I got good skin and height. Ugly face, but everything else is good. Bad hair.
Well,
so what's going on in the diocese while we're away?
We have this mass coming up for Bishop Joseph Galante, who passed away. They're going to celebrate a special Month's Mind Mass for him. If you don't know what a Month's Mind Mass, it's a requiem mass celebrated about 1 month after a person's death in memory of the deceased. And from what I can tell, it's an Irish tradition. So this is going to be celebrated at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception this Friday, June 28th at noon. And Bishop Sullivan will celebrate this memorial mass. And it's going to be held on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus for the repose of the soul of the former wonderful shepherd of the Diocese of Camden, Bishop Galante. So if you can make it out, do so. And I understand, Mary, you got some exciting stuff coming up.
Yes, I see that Summer in the City is coming up. That's from Sunday, August 11th to Saturday, August 17th. And I've never seen this in action, but I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. It's a week-long service learning opportunity for high school students. And from my understanding, they directly serve people who are marginalized and on the peripheries of society. So they'll be focusing on a lot of core Catholic social teaching concepts like service, social justice, community, and all of this through hands-on activities, which I think is really, really important. So
sounds very much out of the Catholic Charities handbook, as a matter of fact.
Yes, it really does.
Why it sounds so familiar to you, probably.
So teens in grades 9 to 12 are welcome. And to register, contact Greg Coogan or Jose Rodriguez. This is sponsored every year by the Youth, Young Adult, and Campus Ministries.
And let's see, to reach Greg Coogan, it's what? greg.coogan@camdendiocese.org and jose.rodriguez@camdendiocese.org.
Yeah.
Or just go to the website. It's there too.
Most importantly, and easily, go to camdendiocese.org.
Yes.
You can find all this and more things. What else we got coming?
What we got coming up, the Wedding of the Sea. That's consistent with Summer of the City because the kids, one of the best things about Wedding of the Sea that takes place in Atlantic City, August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption, is the volunteers for Summer of the City. They help out and they set up a boardwalk hall for this awesome mass. This is going to be again coming up on August 15th, and that should be a good time. Basically, if you've never been to the Wedding of the Sea, the bishop will celebrate mass at Boardwalk Hall and then walk down to the beach and what? Process. Thank you. Yeah, walk. Process. That's a better word, though.
Apparently no one can pronounce procession.
Procession. So, process to the boardwalk, and there'll be benediction on the boardwalk, and then walk to the shore. And hopefully, the bishop will not
fall out of the boat.
Yes.
We came close last year. I always tell him, like, listen, we'll make great press if you get launched out of the boat. And last year. That boat went up in the air. His back was in the water, and because he sits at the very back of the boat, usually with the mayor of Atlantic City, who I think was in the back of the boat with him last year, and that thing tipped up, and boy, oh boy, that was really close.
You captured that moment perfectly.
Yes, I did.
I've never seen a photograph like that.
And the mayor's like holding on to the bishop for dear life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what. So the bishop goes out and tosses a garland into the waters to basically celebrate the union of the city and the sea.
Yeah.
In Mary.
This is an old Italian custom that goes back to I think Venice, if I'm not mistaken. But it's been going on for 1,000 years, and the Italian immigrants brought it to the States, and several, actually, I think almost all of the communities along the Jersey Shore do some kind of wedding of the sea ceremony at some point. I know Cape May does. I know Stone Harbor Avalon does. Wildwood has one nearly the size of the one in Atlantic City. That's done on the vigil of the Feast of the Assumption. So that's a great one to go to as well. If you can't make it to Atlantic City, you can go to Wildwood the night before, where the bishop is also at that one too.
Yeah. No, and speaking of Italian, I forgot to mention, coming up next month in July is the Our Lady of Mount Carmel Festival, a week-long festival at St. Joe's Church in Hamilton. This is going to be really fun. It's the longest-running Italian festival in the United States. So there'll be rides, there'll be food.
How many years? Does it say how many years it's been going on?
Well, since 1875.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is just fun. I've been going the last couple of years. Meatball sandwiches. You can get a lot of food there. Rides, games. Come on out in Our Lady of Mount Carmel. This title refers to the title given to Mary after she presented the scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel to Saint Simon Stock in the 13th century. And also Bishop Sullivan will be there to celebrate Mass at 7:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. on the feast day, Tuesday, July 16th at St. Joseph's Church. So for more info, you can find it at camdendiocese.org. And Mary, you have something really exciting coming up in the fall.
Yes, and this is probably the one event I don't need a paper in front of me to talk about. So now's my time to shine. Our annual Justice for All Awards Dinner is coming up in October, on October 3rd in Atlantic City, another event in Atlantic City. And this dinner is so important to Catholic Charities. Every penny raised from it goes directly towards helping clients with basic needs like housing, food, helping prevent evictions. So it's an annual fundraiser that we have every year. And another huge purpose of this dinner is to honor people at the local level and at the international level who really just live out Catholic social teaching every day. So our main honoree this year is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, and he is the Archbishop of Manila in the Philippines, and he's the president of Caritas Internationalis. And if you haven't heard of that organization, they do amazing work in just about every country in the world. So
they're essentially Catholic Charities. They're like an international version of Catholic Charities.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so he oversees the operations of Caritas and oversees a lot and really is on the front lines of fighting.
He's a very dynamic speaker.
Oh my gosh, yes, I've heard him.
And very close to Pope Francis, very close to Cardinal Tobin as well.
Mm-hmm.
But a very devout Catholic gentleman, as you would expect a cardinal to be. I've been in his presence a handful of times, as you have, come to think of it as well, Mary. And very passionate speaker. I was at a seminar where he gave the homily at the Mass at the end of the day and wept in the midst of his homily because he was so moved at the great work that the Catholic people were doing, particularly in the Baltimore area, for people in need. And
wow.
I mean, he's a person who he's not just a figurehead kind of guy. He really lives this.
Oh, yeah.
And if you see some of the photos that Catholic Charities has put out about Cardinal Tagle, one of the things I love about him, now maybe they just have a really good photographer, but he's constantly surrounded by the people. He is very much a man of the people. So I'm looking forward to him coming to Atlantic City on the 3rd and hanging out with us. So we're actually very much looking forward to it. We're going to have a lot of people available, or we're going to have a lot of seats available for this event because we're thinking there's going to be a big turnout. So we very much hope that everybody can be here.
So to learn more about him or to nominate a Disciple of Mercy, just a quick spiel about the Disciples of Mercy. Every year we also honor one person or group per deanery, and we refer to them as the Disciples of Mercy. And these are people who do work every day in our own diocese, kind of the unsung heroes of the diocese. So we welcome anyone and everyone to submit nominations. And if they are chosen, they will be awarded alongside Cardinal Tagle on October 3rd. So feel free to go to catholiccharitiescamden.org/JFA 2019, and all the information will be there. So that's my JFA spiel.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. And we're delighted now to. How about you introduce your colleague, who's here with us, and is our special guest.
Well, I'm sitting next to Dr. Vincent Mancuso is his official title, and I refer to him as Vinny.
I've heard Dr.
And so does
Vinny.
Everyone else. So,
Everyone else.
and I'm privileged and blessed to be able to work with him at Catholic Charities. And do you want to introduce
Sure.
yourself?
I'll start by saying I am still adjusting to the situation right here. So I am a regular listener to the podcast, and I'm used to hearing your voices, Mike and Pete in particular, but I'm used to your voices being these disembodied voices, sort of like in my kitchen or in my car. And I'm still going through a process of being like, why is Pete's voice coming out of this guy in front of me right here? I'm seeing the first time. I'm not sure if you've had the experience of like knowing someone's voice on the radio really well, and then you see them the first time and you're like, it's not exactly what I thought they look like. So when you guys were going through the announcements a few minutes ago, I was like, I should be folding laundry right now, I think, or something, or cooking dinner. And I'm like, oh, I'm in the room with them. They might talk to me. I have to be ready to respond to them.
That's funny.
It's always funny putting faces to names like that.
Now I'm envisioning the people listening to this as they're doing laundry or driving or whatnot. I'll be thinking of you when I record the next subsequent ones.
That's right.
I'm thinking of you doing laundry.
I will be. And other thoughts as a fan who's here on the podcast. When they say vault, that is not a metaphor. We're in a vault right now.
That is right.
We are. Yeah, this used to be an old bank vault. This used to be a bank back in the day, this building. And of course, the bank vault, there's still the. It is an unsettling feeling when that door slams shut.
Oh, it
it's almost
sure
like
is.
you're, now we got you. We're not letting
I feel
you
like it
out.
might be an escape room or something. There might be
Right.
some themes. If I don't solve the right puzzles and pick up the right clues during the podcast, I might be stuck here all night. We'll see.
That sounds like a great themed podcast. We can do an escape room podcast where people need to know Catholic trivia to get out. So the only way you can get out is if you know what Saint Mary of, what Saint Therese of Lisieux was the feast of.
I'm breaking out in cold sweat
I'm
just
fine.
envisioning that situation.
I'm fine unless you collect my phone before I'm allowed in there. I can't Google some of these answers.
Oh my gosh, that's what.
Well, I hope you
what?
aren't picturing a nice fancy setup.
This is
Although
just
you
great.
know what, this
Keep
vault has come a long way. I see that there's been some decoration, but
Yeah, we're still working on it. Well, Vinny, so what is your title again at Catholic
Sure.
Charities?
So I'm the coordinator of the English Learning Center at Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Camden. And the English Learning Center, I'm going to quote from our mission statement. We are a place that's intending to help our students gain the confidence, knowledge, and learning strategies they need to speak and read and write in English. And so most of our students are adult refugees. Many came through the Catholic Charities Immigration and Refugee Program. Some of our other students are immigrants who are in the area, and most of them are adults who want to learn English. So they come to us. We're open 3 days a week in the summer, 4 days a week the rest of the year. And for a couple hours every day, the students can come in, and we get to know our students pretty well, and we try to give them tailored, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes small group, sometimes more formal English instruction to help them get more comfortable with the language here.
Wow. So is it kind of like a drop-in? Can people just show up, or they need to schedule an appointment?
Well, we try to schedule as best we can. Our students have busy lives. They have children. They have jobs. They have, when they first come here as refugees and immigrants, their lives are in flux. They just arrive here, So we do what we can to work out schedules with them. So for 2019, right now, we have approximately 20 students. And some of them come 3 days a week, some come 4 days a week, some come once a week, some of them come once or twice a month. And so we try to work with the students as best we can to work with them and meet them where they are and help them learn some English that way. We can't really do a syllabus exactly or a curriculum because our students have a lot going on in their lives and their schedules change. So we meet them where they are. And, the drop-in system works okay. I ask the students to text us in advance so we can match them up with a teacher. So I'm a volunteer there, and there's about 5 or 6 other volunteer teachers. We're all volunteers, and we find it works the best when the teachers can get to know the students, because that way they know the students' level of English, and they work on having a rapport with the students, get to be friends with the students, get to earn the students' trust, and the students learn better that way when they can be comfortable with their teachers.
What languages are these? What's the first language of these students?
There are a lot.
Yeah.
So there's some Spanish, there's some Haitian Creole, there's Arabic. Arabic has several different dialects. There's Burmese. There's a few different languages spoken from our Burmese refugee students. And probably 1 or 2 other ones I'm not thinking of right now. But a variety of first languages. And so this can be a challenge for us because not all of our teachers speak the first language of all of our students. So we do the best we can. We have some teachers who have at least familiarity with the students' first languages, and we have other students who can help each other out, and we meet them where they are and really have them work together. And, the diversity of languages really can be a strength, I think, for our classroom, because we can have students working side by side in pairs or in small groups from totally different backgrounds. And, as an adult, I'm not sure if you guys tried to ever learn another language as an adult.
Oh, yeah.
It's scary and it's intimidating, and it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. Our students, a lot of them have just arrived here in the United States from really scary conditions and are adjusting. And on top of everything else, they have to be willing to look like someone who speaks English very poorly in front of strangers. And that's really scary. And so we have students from different backgrounds who don't speak the same first language. When we have someone from Haiti able to communicate in a little bit of English with someone from Syria, that's a tremendous experience for both of them. And they really get to bond, and they really see that the English Learning Center is a place where they can feel comfortable doing that and start getting some practice using English.
It has...
Oh, go ahead.
Anytime I'm ever stressed or having a bad day, I make my way over to the ESL room, and it just warms my heart in ways that I can't even describe. The enthusiasm and the eagerness, and like you said, they're coming from really, really difficult situations from their countries of origin, and they know that in order to really do anything here in this country, they need to learn English. And like you said, that's intimidating, but just seeing the way, they're raising their hands and they're trying things out, and it's just amazing to witness. And like you said, there'll be somebody from Pakistan sitting next to somebody from Iraq, and next to them is someone from Haiti, and they're all learning together, and that's just something that's so amazing.
I'm curious, Vinny. I've often heard that it's easier for younger students to learn versus older students. Have you noticed that that's the case?
Well, you sort of touched on a nerve. I have so many thoughts about this.
Uh-huh.
I have become not super qualified to talk about this. My grad school work was in genetics, right? Not a linguist, but I have become so skeptical of that idea that you just said.
Yeah.
So in our families, what we see is when an entire family comes, a lot of refugee families, there's adults and there's kids. And the adults, they come and they work hard, they get jobs, and they come to class and try to learn, and they do okay with English, but the kids are dropped into a school, and in a year, they talk like an American kid. You wouldn't know they didn't speak English a year and a half earlier. Literally, year and a half. They are totally fluent and comfortable. And so the conclusion you make is, kids learn languages so much quicker. And they literally do learn so much quicker. But there's so much else going on for those kids about how we learn languages, for example. So the kids are in a situation where they're in school all day only hearing English. Right? And the adults, they try hard, but they only have a couple hours a day to work on it, and adults get discouraged a little more easier, I think. I say there's never been a 7-year-old who came to a new country and said, forget it, I'm too old for this stuff. I'm never learning this language. That hasn't happened, right? That's something adults say, right? I'm trying to learn Spanish right now as an adult so I can talk to my students better, so I can have some empathy with that. And I'm optimistic about my chances of learning Spanish in the next couple of years, but I get discouraged too. So it's easy to say as an adult, I'm so bad at this, it's been 3 months, I quit. No 7-year-old says that. They keep going, they keep trying, right? They come to the country and they're like, I want to know what Black Panther is, right? I want to understand these songs on the radio. And so they learn and they throw themselves into it. It's easier for children to throw themselves into it than adults. And I think that might be the key, more than like something happening with your brain. I think adults are capable, but it takes time. And even, I'm sorry, I have one more point to make about this. I have so many thoughts on this.
You are the guest.
So I've got a couple of kids. My two little ones are 5 and 6. They're in kindergarten. They're
Adorable.
reasonably bright. Thank you. And adorable. They're reasonably bright American kids. They've been speaking English for 5 and 6 years, all they've ever known. All their songs they've ever learned were in English. All the books they've ever seen. Everyone who loves them only speaks English. But they still make tons of grammatical errors. 6 years in, they're working like crazy, tons of grammatical errors. Today, my son used the word, he was trying somehow how someone bit something yesterday. He said bited instead of bit. Right, because he made an error making the past tense, and 5, 6 years in, he's still making these mistakes, and it's okay for kids, right? So adults, if it takes you 5 or 6 years, you're still not there, just keep going. You can do it.
That makes me very happy to hear, because I've been trying to learn Spanish. Well, let's see. I did French in high school. That didn't work. I did Spanish in college.
Sure.
That really didn't work either. Because we have so many Spanish-speaking Catholics, as the director of communications, I think it's my duty to learn the language. And I got news for you. I'll try to learn the other ones too, but I can't promise anything. But since the largest population is Spanish, I made it my goal this year to learn Spanish. So I downloaded a couple of apps. January 1st. And I was true to it for at least 3 days. And then I got so frustrated with it, even though the apps were pretty easy and pretty simple. And I haven't gotten back to it since. So now that we're at the halfway point of the year, I really feel like I have a duty to go back and start learning again.
And so here's the thing. I tell my students this too, and it's true for you and me too. If you want to be good at speaking a language, you have to be willing to be bad at speaking that language for a long time. And work on that with our students. That's what we really try to carve out a space for them to come in and try English, and they know their English is riddled with errors, but we listen patiently and show them, you can communicate in this language, but you're not going to do it perfectly for a couple of years. But here, if you are from Haiti, you can talk to someone from Syria, and you guys can communicate if you take your time. And you're bad at it right now, yes, but you can get by like this, and you're going to have to keep working at it and be willing to humble yourself enough to be bad at it for a while and kind of embarrass yourself. And it's difficult for us as adults, especially growing up in a country where there aren't that many languages, almost everyone speaks English. You're not used to putting yourself in a position where you have to speak a language poorly to another adult in a professional setting too. For you, it would be very challenging, right, and humbling to do.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have nothing but low self-esteem, so I'm good with humbling. But it's true. Mary, you picked up Korean.
Yes.
Did you find that? You're fluent in it? Did you find that?
Not completely fluent, but enough.
You're pretty darn fluent. Did you find that living in the culture is really what made the difference?
Oh,
that
goodness.
Immersiveness?
Yes. So a year before I went to live in Korea to teach ESL, I had Rosetta Stone. I was watching every Korean YouTube channel. I was watching K-drama. I don't know if anyone's ever checked that out. Storylines weren't great, but it put, a lot of the colloquial language out there. And, I studied books. And I went to Korea thinking like, okay, I kind of got this, only to arrive there and realize I know nothing. And I was the only, they call them Huigukin, foreigner. I was the only foreigner in my entire neighborhood. So I stood out like a sore thumb. Sure. And
you're also a foot taller than everybody else there.
You'd be surprised. The average height of the Korean male is 5'9". And I think that's almost
Korean female.
Maybe like 5'3".
Okay, you stick out.
But compared to a lot of other Asian countries, Korea is the tallest.
Oh, okay.
Which is I didn't know that going in either. Okay. But yes, I stood out anyway because I'm 5'11". But just being in situations where you have to speak that language, or else it was really humbling. I can't go to the grocery store and talk about what I need to find unless I learn the language. I can't, stop someone on the street and ask if I'm lost, just being kind of forced and thrown into that environment and accepting the fact that I'm going to feel uncomfortable and I'm going to mess up and I'm going to use a word that I think means one thing, but it actually means the other. And then there's the whole, there's two different sets of languages. One you use for people younger than yourself. Oh, wow. The other used for elders.
Really?
So that threw me off, and I can only imagine how many times I've told, the oldest person I've met and spoken to them like I would a kid.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right. And I didn't even think about it. You made a point when you said everyone says kids pick up faster. And for a while, I thought that was because, okay, their brains are more moldable,
Sure.
you know.
Sure.
But you're right. I think they're once in schools and environments where they have to, and two, they're kind of less afraid of being embarrassed. The older we get, the more
right.
afraid we are of messing up.
And I think that underestimates how much work kids are doing when they learn language. They're
Right.
working like crazy
Yeah,
full time.
it's
All they're trying to do is
hard.
learn the language they're immersed
Oh
in,
my
right?
gosh, right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
As adults, we do things like, Duolingo for a while, Rosetta Stone, then take a break. But the kids, they just live in it, right?
Yeah.
So their brain picks it
Right.
up. Yeah.
I'm curious. When you were in Korea, Mary, were obviously I have to assume to any Korean, they knew you were not a native speaker and were probably learning it. Did you find that people were accepting of your limitations as a speaker and appreciated the fact that you were making an
yeah.
attempt?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's not specific to Korea, but the Korean people are very receptive to that. They're not used to seeing foreigners, so sometimes they didn't understand when I would tell them in Korean, can you please slow down a little? They'd be, oh yeah, because
Right.
they're not used
Sure.
to seeing foreigners. But when people see that you're trying, you know,
We try to help our
they
students.
appreciate
We
that.
help our students
you
see
know?
that too, right? That people see you're working, right? They want you to succeed. They want to be
Right.
patient, and if you're not great, it's okay. People, it's embarrassing. I don't blame people for being so shy
Yeah.
about it. I'm shy too, speaking Spanish, but you can get by with some broken language, you know. And if in a formal English setting in a classroom for children, you have to teach them all the rules of grammar and stuff. But what we do in English Learning Center is we try to prepare our students to use English,
Right.
And give them the tools, because we know they have changing life situations. Some students come for a few months, then can't come anymore. Some can come for a year, then can't come anymore. And we're not expecting to see many of our students until they're fluent, until they can write a high school English essay. We expect
Right.
to at least get them some experience using the language, get them familiar with how to learn the language, give them the tools to keep learning it after
Yeah.
their time with us.
And you know what? Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, continue. I was, but continue.
Hold on to that thought.
I will.
Before I
promise.
forget mine.
I'm not going to forget.
Just last week, there was an amazing event that Vinny, among many other things, orchestrated for the English Learning Center. And one of our Pakistani refugees saw me in the office and kind of ushered me into the training room. And there is this buffet of food that every... you know what? No, can you explain what that was?
Sure.
That just blew my mind.
Yeah, this is a really great event. This is organized by one of our volunteers, Antonina Bellasort. We have several volunteers who all care so much and really focus on teaching English and helping the students feel welcome in their new home country here in America. And so Antonina had this idea for a while where she wanted to do a sort of end of the school year, kick off summer international luncheon, where we had everyone, teachers and students, bring in a traditional dish from their country for everyone to share. And so that's what Mary saw. It was great. We had food from 8 different countries, I think.
Yeah.
Almost all homemade. The American stuff wasn't homemade. The international stuff was homemade.
Well, then it was true American food if it wasn't homemade.
Yeah, what
There
did
go.
you?
right.
You brought like apple pie or no?
Yeah, another one of our volunteers brought an apple pie.
From Costco?
That's as American as we could think of.
pretty
Yes.
American.
And I brought in peanut butter and jelly, which
And you know what?
sounded
That
like a
is
cop out.
nice.
You know,
I like peanut
my students were working hard on these dishes, and I felt like copying out. I was copying out a little, just making peanut butter and jelly. But actually, I got there. I talked to about 8 or 9 students who had never tasted peanut butter and jelly in their lives. I'm like, you're American now. You have to at least try it once. Most of them thought it was gross. And
Aw.
only one of our students actually had peanut butter in their house.
Oh my
I was like,
gosh.
what? I was like, this.
Wow.
So I was glad I brought that one. They got to try,
Yeah.
at least most of them had a bite or two of that. But there were so many other great dishes. I don't know the names of most of the dishes. I forgot them. I have them written down. But they were all delicious. And everyone got to share their food with their friends. And we also had this other amazing thing where we had the students write out cards where they drew the flag of their home country and described on the cards what was in their dish in English. And they worked together in groups to do that. And then everyone stood up and presented to the group in English what they had prepared using English words. And that was great. I was so
That
proud
was
of them.
amazing.
Yeah.
Seeing that.
Because we're seeing our students do some public speaking
Right.
in English in front of other people, which is so far from where they started. And we're giving them the confidence. And very few of them were speaking perfect English, but we understood what they were going for, and they got that experience. And we're giving them the tools they need to feel more confident with the language.
Yeah. I thought that activity was amazing because you're using, you know, some colloquial language and then some words that are difficult, like
That's right.
ingredient
That's right.
names
Yeah,
and
sure.
verbs to use when it comes to making food.
Yeah.
That's challenging, but people use that language all the time.
And also
like
very
you said, the
practical.
public speaking and then asking
Yeah.
questions. I mean, that
Yeah.
everything about that was just so...
It was really great. A lot of dedicated volunteers. And the thing about food, we've discovered as teachers, we really try to get our students in English Learning Center talking, right? That's our
Yes.
goal. Not necessarily filling them up with grammar rules or anything. Get them talking. We tell the new volunteers that we think of this place not so much a classroom as a gym, right? We're personal trainers getting people talking. And we found from experience that food is something everyone wants to talk about. Right? Like you all love talking about.
brings
and
us all
anyone, if we don't know
together.
anything about them, what kind of food do you eat? Right? How do you say garlic in your language? Right? How do you say corn in your language? Tell us about this food. How do you prepare that? People love that. And so the idea of bringing food was a great idea. And it was a really great day.
Well, it's fun you're talking about food because I just wrote a story about the soccer cup that took place a few weeks ago now. And in my story, I alluded to orange slices, which are used. And that was my English translation. And then it went up to the diocesan Hispanic, Andres Anango, the bishop's delegate for Hispanic ministry, who translated it to Spanish. I did not know this. He told me there is no word in Spanish for orange slices, or they don't understand it. So instead, he wrote palomitas de maíz, which is popcorn. And it's like, what? It's just so... I don't know. I think the word is like transliteration. About it's just so interesting how they wouldn't understand if you translate orange slices to like piezas de naranja.
Sure.
Which in my head, the people reading that in the Spanish-speaking communities would understand that.
Yeah.
That's curious. Those nuances.
It is.
There's
Right.
a few. There's a few.
Well,
of them.
that opens up even another conversation about the Spanish language, which is, we think of Spanish as a single entity. Us, particularly white Americans, we think of it as a standard. But whereas the Cuban language isn't necessarily the same as the Dominican language. It's not the same as the Colombian language. It's not necessarily the same as the Mexican language. It's not necessarily the same as the Puerto Rican language, and it's certainly not the same as the Spanish language from Spain. So you have all these different dialects. So if there's no Andres is from Colombia. I don't know if Colombia ships in oranges. There may be conceptually there may be no perspective of oranges.
Yeah,
but not certainly he's become accustomed to oranges. But it's living in the States for as long as he has. But just in general, I could see that as an issue. I'm not sure popcorn is necessarily where I would go as opposed to oranges, but sure.
Well, I guess, popcorn's good after
Popcorn,
soccer,
it's funny you mentioned, it's one of my favorite translation stories, actually. When you start thinking of other languages and talk about your language, you become very self-conscious, and you realize the English language is quite a mess, and there's a lot of nuance, right? And we prepare our students for some of that. And we were talking about food once, and the issue of popcorn came up, or as my Colombian students call it, palomitas de maíz. Is that what it is? Right. And they know the word for corn. I was like, we call that popcorn. And I realized, isn't that a really fun word? Because when you're cooking it, it pops. And I got to explain to them, it's called popcorn because it pops. And they're like, what a silly language you have.
Yeah, right?
That's a really silly word. When you hear someone else because it makes a pop sound. They understood that. And
it's so funny how we don't realize how idiomatic English is. I remember talking to my students that I would teach them English, and I would always have to, in the back of my mind, remember, okay, you have to use the most literal
That's right, yeah.
phrases.
Yeah.
If I walked in and I said, oh my God, it's raining sideways today, or anything like that, I feel like 75% of the way we speak, if you were to translate that literally, would make zero sense.
Sure.
And I witnessed that with Korean. I'm saying, what? I know what these words mean, but I have no idea what they mean in that context.
Occasionally I have to write scripts for Bishop Sullivan, and I know they're going to be translated, and that is absolutely something I take into account.
Yeah.
But it flummoxes me on a regular basis because I'm like, okay, what do I mean? What am I really trying to say here? Not using this idiomatic language. The question I was going to ask you earlier, Mary, yesterday we were blessed to be able to record a Burmese, a young man from Myanmar who was trying to enter a college musical department. And he asked us to video him, playing the guitar and singing. And it caught me to wondering, how long has he been in the U.S. now? Do you know?
I don't know if you know Muan. He's the oldest. He has a bunch of younger siblings. I think he came in 2017.
Okay, so he's new to the English language, right?
2016, yes. He didn't speak a word of English
and his
before
comfort
he came
level now is like, it was so sweet. Like he was so sweet to begin with, and B, he was so generous in his time and the manner in which he was conversing with us, and I could tell he was kind of sheepish about his grasp of the English language, and yet he was outstanding.
Yeah.
And going back to the earlier point we were making, I am always happy to as someone I know who is struggling with the language or learning the language, man, I will sit there all day while you try to come up with it, and I'll help you if I need to. But
sure.
And you know what? That was his English is his fourth language.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind. This kid's 17, and that's why it drives me crazy. If you hear anyone complaining about broken English, ask them, okay, how many languages do you speak? You know what I mean? I mean, he thinks, and that's another mind-blowing thing, the fact that people think in other languages that isn't, you know what I mean? He probably thinks in his native Burmese language.
Well, it's funny you say that, Mary, because my father was born in Cuba, as Mike said. A background. And recently, my parents and him went to Spain. My parents and him. My mother and him went to Spain with my sister. And my dad had such an experience where he could speak his native language to everybody. It was wonderful. He was speaking Spanish, and he talked about, for the first time in decades, he's dreaming in Spanish.
That's another thing, dreaming.
And it's amazing. It was so pleasant to him. I mean, he left Cuba when he was 15. And 60-something years later, he goes back, and it's just, now he's dreaming, and I'm like, I was like, I'm selfish because I want him here, but at the same time, I'm like, he should retire, like, in Madrid. Like, I don't know, that's an awesome way to be able to.
Well, it's funny. I learned French in high school, and I learned Spanish. By the way, air quotes learned. Sure. French and Spanish. French in high school.
I heard you speak some French one time.
Well, that's the thing.
I don't know it, but it sounded really good.
Well, here's the thing: is that I very rarely get to travel to French-speaking places, and even though I'm around a lot of Spanish people, I have found that I had French aunts, so I would hear them speak French all the time. They lived in Canada, in Montreal. And then I got family in France. So recently I went to France for a day, and just going back there, like hearing the French language spoken, I was like, wait, I got this. I got it.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't necessarily converse in it, but suddenly I was able to read it again.
Right.
And I kind of understood what everybody was saying to me, and I could order lunch, but that was about it. And then 2 years ago, I went to Quebec City. Which is very bilingual, but it was, but everything was in French, and I tried to converse as much as I could in French, broken French as it were. But I find that even though I had 1 year of French and 1 year of Spanish, the Spanish is just not stuck in my head. I mean, we were around Spanish-speaking people all the time, and once they go off, I'm like, nope, I got nothing.
Sure.
Zilch. Hola. Yeah. I got that.
You're there.
Rice and beans. If you say it in English, I'm fine with that. But that's all I got. Yeah, it's terrible. But that's why I'm really fighting hard to make. Maybe that's what I'll do while I'm camping. I will
find the Spanish-speaking people and camp with them. Share a tent.
I have the Duolingo app on my phone. I haven't cracked it open since January 3rd.
Well, you have service in the middle of nowhere.
I will. Yes, I will. I'm not in the middle of nowhere. I'm on the Eastern Shore. I'll be fine. But maybe that's what that'll be my treat to myself. But the key is, and what I'm joking with Marianela Nunez, who's on the podcast from time to time, is what I really need to do is be around Spanish speakers and be a little bit more immersed. So maybe that'll be my second half of the year goal.
And don't be afraid to speak it poorly. Just go for it. I'll do that with myself, with my students after class. I'm like, I'm going to talk Spanish now, guys. Get ready for it. Here it comes. Have to be patient, please.
And you have a way about you, Vinny, that makes them at ease, and that's what makes you so incredible at
that's just
ESL.
Being a good teacher too.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. But he'll call on people, and you challenge them, but in a way that's not intimidating. And I feel like that's a really hard line to walk. You don't want to scare them out of speaking, but you still want to push them.
And we have a specific challenge here as teachers in the English Learning Center, because we're teaching them, but we don't have the same sort of motivators that a teacher would in a classroom. We're not giving them a grade, right? They're not counting on a certificate for professional development. They're there because they're seeing themselves learn. They believe they can learn. So it's our job to make them see, yes, you can learn. Please keep coming. This is so good for you.
Yep.
And they can't be like, oh, this isn't working for me, but I'm going to come for the grade anyway. That's not going to happen for us. We want to make sure they can see a practical way they can use language.
Right.
Now, do you find it challenging? I'm thinking you're trying to teach them the English language, but things change in the English language so much. I mean,
Sure.
even now,
Oh my gosh,
text messaging, everything's shorthand,
Yeah, that's right.
LOL. Like, does that come into the equation?
Well, keeping up with that, let me think about this for a second. So, you know what? We talk about verbs and stuff. We talk about new verbs that didn't exist long ago, like email, emailed, text, texted, things like that. You know, in Spanish, for example, they literally say send a message all the time. They don't say texted, right? I texted him, or I will text you, right? We turn things into verbs. And so we try to use things like that for chances for students to learn, you know, because English has a lot of irregular tenses and stuff, but with new words, they're usually pretty regular. It's a good way to practice grammar, to see how we're incorporating new words into our language.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like with texting, people
Yeah,
seem to like,
shorthands and stuff.
exactly.
Most of my students aren't texting people who are that good at English where they do that so far, LOLs and stuff, luckily, but that would be something they would eventually need to learn. But to start with, we're working on real basics with them.
I wonder if the use of emojis is universal.
Funny, yeah, we
I
haven't
just thought
incorporated
about
emoji into our curriculum, but maybe we should.
Oh my gosh,
That'd be a
people
fun
just
lesson,
be-
emotions, and then like
yeah,
match the
we've definitely done
emoji.
emotions and stuff. That's funny. That'd be good. That'd be great. I'm writing this stuff down right now. Next
Everybody,
week.
it's a universal language. Will
Emojis
just
for
be,
English students. So can I tell you guys about how I started working there?
I was just
Sure,
about
sure.
to say.
You were just
please.
answering your own question.
Good. Yeah, you guys can take a break if you want. I can handle it from here.
You got it.
You are like the ideal guest.
That is our ideal guest. Just we'll
Because the
we'll
three
sit
of
here
us
and
will not
you go.
shut up. But
So how'd you get started?
No, so I am a stay-at-home dad, and my two youngest were about to start preschool full-time in September of 2018. And so they've been going preschool 3 days a week. I had some time at home. That was great. Got some projects done around the house, but they were going to start 5 full days. It seemed like a lot of time to me. And so my family wasn't quite ready for me to go back to work full-time. And so my wife and I talked about it. We decided I wanted to do something, some sort of volunteer work or something with the time during the day. It'd be good for our family if I could do that. And I wanted something I'd kind of sink my teeth into if possible. And so we were thinking and praying about that. And I was also focusing on the idea of encounter, right? So Pope Francis has been telling us over and over again, so wisely, that an important part of our Christianity is encounter with people who need it, right? It's great, super important to give money to good causes. It's super important to collect items to donate to the poor. But what really changes us and really lets us live out our Christian vocations when we meet people who need our help and give our help directly to them. So that was in my heart, and I was thinking and praying and seeing what was out there. And getting ready for the kids to go to school in a few months in advance before they started. I was researching what sort of nonprofits are in the area and stuff. And I was also listening to this podcast. So I like lots of podcasts. And I found this one early on. I think I found it through Twitter or something. And the first couple episodes, you guys had some people that I was familiar with. So I started listening to it. And then once you had Kevin Hickey on, I looked it up. This was like late 2017 or something. He was on there. And I knew about Catholic Charities mostly because I guess honestly from the Catholic Star Herald and the Bishop's annual appeal videos. Every year we would see some of the great work happening in Catholic Charities. And I'd say to myself, that seems like a great place for me to encounter some people, really meet some people who are really working, living out their discipleship, and really meet some people I can help. And so I listened to that podcast, and you guys used to do this thing. I don't think you do anymore, where at the end of the podcast, you would ask someone, what's some like life advice you want everyone to have? And so Kevin Hickey was on, and he said at the end, he was like, you know, he's like, he loves to meet people and stuff, meet people who work for him. And he said, you know, I get lots of applications and lots of resumes, and it's hard for me to connect to the people. And so my advice is if you're going to like work somewhere or something, to try to like meet the boss there, go in and talk to him, whatever. So I'm like, all right, sounds good. So I decided to go with Catholic Charities for somewhere to try to spend some time during the day when my kids were in school. And I went online and got the volunteer application and filled that out and lined up my references and stuff. And so then I drove up to the offices and walked in instead of emailing it to the office where I work now on Haddon Avenue. And I walked in and saw Anna, who I now know at the front desk. She's a receptionist there. I didn't know her at the time. And I handed the resume. I was like, my name is Vincent Mancuso. I'd like to volunteer here. And she says, what department do you want to volunteer in? And I was like, I don't know. What do you guys have? So I decided to enter into this, just open myself up to God, see what God had planned for me. And so I said, and she said, well, a refugee program takes some volunteers. And I said, sounds good. All right, put my thing in there. Then we stood there for a second, and I was like, I'd like to meet with Mr. Kevin Hickey too. And she very politely stared at me for a minute.
Oh, I hope he
and
listens
I was like,
to this.
I was
oh
like,
my God.
so I said to her, I heard him on this podcast, and he said that if I come in, I should go talk to him. Now, I love podcasts and they're great. But I know a lot of people still don't exactly know what podcasts are or how to get them. So she was super polite. So she's like, let me make a phone call. And she's like, what's your name again? I'm like, it's Vincent Mancuso, but he doesn't know me and he's not expecting me, but that's my name. And so she makes a phone call. And a few minutes later, someone I know really well now, he didn't have time, Rose, who is Mr. Hickey's administrative assistant, she comes out to talk to me, and I'm like, oh, hi, my name is Vincent Mancuso. I'm going to start volunteering here, and I'm here to meet Mr. Hickey. And she's like, okay, what's your name again? I'm like, Vincent Mancuso. I was like, he doesn't know me, but I heard him on this podcast, and he said I should talk to him when I come in. And she, again, was very polite, too. Now, they're probably imagining I'm hearing voices in my head or something at this point, but he told me to, so I was like, I'm going to do this. And so then she's like, well, he's in a meeting now, but I can take your information. And she politely did take my information. And so then I came back later for once my background checks and things went through to work there, and I met Samantha Astley for the first time, who was the volunteer coordinator for the refugee program at the time. And she went through the whole process with me, like explaining what I was going to be doing. And she's like, we're going to put you in the ESL program if you can do that, the English program if you can do that. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. And I was waiting. She's like, oh, and also you can come meet Mr. Hickey now. And I was like, yes, good, I got it. So I was going to bring it up. If she didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up again because he was pretty determined. That's how he wants to know people. So I went in there and talked to him and basically just had not much to say to him other than the story that I heard on the podcast. And like, I'm here to meet you because you told me to come meet you on the first day. I'm here to volunteer.
Wait, this is
That is
amazing.
the
power
so
of the
this
podcast. There you
brought
go.
you here.
And now I'm on the podcast.
I think that's
the
it.
circle's complete.
This is the last episode
Shut
ever.
it down. Shut it down, guys.
Shut it down. This is the pinnacle. That's amazing.
I didn't know that
hit
it
the
was
mountain.
listening to this that I thought that you just heard of Catholic Charities.
I
somewhere
had
else,
heard of
but
Catholic Charities. That story specifically was because I heard this. I
But
may
you-
have ended up here had I not heard that interview, but this podcast gave me what I was going to do my first day, where I was going to go in there and talk to the boss.
Well,
First thing.
what makes me
I
very
don't
happy
even
is
know where to begin.
I will
with
tell you that it won't be
responding
the
to
last
that.
episode because what you're telling us right now is the whole reason the podcast
I
exists
know.
Right.
is to spotlight people in and around the diocese so that other people can learn about the good works that they're doing and how to engage with them. And that's exactly what occurred.
And you know
So,
how grouchy Kevin was before he came on this podcast.
I know, and now
you had to
he's
force him
so
to. And
cuddly
look what
about it.
happened.
I know.
I'm so glad to hear that because I feel like the podcast is a great resource for me to learn about the different things that are happening around the diocese. And particularly hear from people who are doing good work on the diocese, how they got involved, and also how their faith is informing their life and informing their work.
Yeah.
So it's great. So thanks for the podcast, guys. This
sure.
is great.
Well,
I've really
thank-
enjoyed it. And I was
So as far as
Wait,
I'm
Vinny.
concerned, this means we're 1 for 127. So
I agree. No, that's okay. Put
fine.
it on the board. Check mark, you
that's
know?
it. Got one right. So what were we going to say, Mary?
Vinny, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably won't like this question because I feel like I've known you for a while now and I had no idea about this until somebody said, did you know Vinny has a PhD in, I don't know, I forget what it is, neuroscience? I said, what? Not that I doubted that you weren't. Wait,
Smart.
Yes. But I said, no way. Really? Can you
Sure.
tell us about that?
Yeah,
'Cause
sure.
I'm curious.
So I've always loved science since I was a little kid. And, you know, when I learned about outer space, I wanted to be an astronomer. And then I saw Jurassic Park. I wanted to be a paleontologist,
Yes.
right? And I wanted to be a physicist for a while. You went through that whole thing too, right? I just always loved science. That was the thing, right? And, you know, Jurassic Park ties in because it's a lot about DNA. Anyway, so by the time I got to high school and college, I was into physics, but I realized that what I thought was the most amazing science at the time, and I still would argue is right now for our period, is biology, right? The human genome was being sequenced at the time when I was applying to colleges, and I liked outer space and stuff, but there's so much amazing stuff happening here on Earth, specifically in our bodies, right? The way our whole
Yeah.
bodies grow, to know that we all come from a single cell that initially has all the programming required to build a whole body. It's so amazing. There's so much work to do there. So I went to college for biology in general at Rutgers, and I went more in the genetics and microbiology direction. And so I majored in that at Rutgers, then worked in a lab at Rutgers for a while, and then applied to grad school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania and got my doctorate in cell and molecular biology. So, and that was a great experience. And I loved science and academia. It was a lot of work. And by the time I got to the end of my work at the University of Pennsylvania, I realized looking back, the thing I loved the most about science was teaching it. Believe it or not, right? So I got to mentor some students. I really loved that. I got to give presentations to the department. I really loved that. I did some work with an organization that ran science fairs in local middle schools where scientists went to the schools and helped the kids run their science fair. I loved that too. And so by the time grad school was over, I was a dad of one. Our daughter was about 18 months, probably, almost 2. We had 1 kid at the time. And my wife and I we were planning on probably having more kids in the future. And I liked the science, but that sort of track I was going on was going to take more and more and more time and effort. And really, honestly, I'd be doing it so that I could teach on the side. So we decided for our family that I was going to be a stay-at-home dad for a little while and eventually go back probably to teach some sort of either high school or college or both, probably science. And that's still my plan. And so it's funny. I said I went to Catholic Charities totally open, not looking for anything in particular, but I ended up being a teacher there now. Now I'm teaching English, which wasn't what I went to school for. But that's where I am right now. And yeah, I really love it. I love sitting across from someone or in front of people and helping them see that they can learn this.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's science, which I taught when I was in grad school, or if it's English now for our students.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think teachers just naturally gravitate to teaching. It's the one thing I've loved in my entire life, even though I don't do it in a classroom like I used to do it, but that it's the part of my job, educating people and helping them along. It's one of the things I like about having a staff is that I can sort of, help them along, particularly the younger staff members, although they all teach me constantly. But yeah, I think if you have that natural inclination to be a teacher, you'll find your way into doing it without ever thinking about it. It'll just come to you because you're open to it. And it's the thing that you're going to go, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. When the opportunity comes up, you go for it. Yeah. I found myself doing that all throughout grad school. Yeah. And I realized by the end that working in a lab full time as a scientist was great. I could have done it, but the thing I really loved was the teaching. I really wanted to do it for that, so I wanted to focus more on that.
No, you guys need to have a separate podcast, part 2 with Vinny, and I want the topic to be
science,
Catholicism, and science.
Yeah,
and,
I'm ready for it.
You hear that all the time. How do you reconcile the two? But I feel like that is a podcast of its own.
That's one of my favorite things. The books I read are all astrophysics books because I love science. So we'll have it'll be Vinny, it'll be me, and wait, we got another one.
I'll just sit in the corner and let my mind be blown.
No, we'll have Mike Canaris, our columnist from the Catholic Star Herald, who has very much that science and religion bent as well. So that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have like an elevator speech of... I'm sure you've thought about this before, people, science, religion, not being able to make the connection.
I feel like it's not as big a contradiction as it seems to be superficially, right? So science, right? When I'm in a lab doing a science experiment, when I'm going to present something, if I'm going to publish a result, right? I'm going to say I use scientific technique to determine this result, right? I know exactly what this gene does in this organism because I added the gene, then I took it away, and then I added too much of the gene, and then I did this test and that test. And that's a scientific technique, right, of experimentation and hypothesis and disproving hypotheses, right? That's what you do. I don't feel like God's role in my life or God's role in the universe is something you can easily subject to scientific technique, right? And so we haven't done those tests. And so these set of tools we use as scientists in a lab don't really apply to what we understand about Jesus Christ having died for our sins, for example, right? So I don't see the contradiction. Some people say like, oh, if you can't apply a scientific method to something, you shouldn't believe it. But there's lots of things we can't apply a scientific method to. And God's role in our life, the way we love each other, how we love our families, so much about our identities, some things the scientific method doesn't really apply to. So I don't see why there necessarily be a contradiction.
Yeah, I found, I think it was brother, the guy who runs he's a Jesuit. He runs the Science Academy in the Vatican, Brother Guy Casalamega, I think his name is. Anyway, his whole thing was, I went to a presentation he gave at one point, and his thing was that he finds that science actually increases his appreciation for, now granted he's a brother, he's a religious brother, but his choice to be a scientist increases his spirituality, because as he looks at it, it's an opportunity to discover a little bit more of God's love of the universe and the things that he created and why they were created and how they were created. So it doesn't take him away from his spiritual faith. If anything, it increases his spiritual faith. Yeah. And that sense of wonder that right, all of us exist, and any of us who have an appreciation for science. I am certainly not a scientist. I am a science aficionado. I don't have the math skills to be a scientist, but I do do have the appreciation to be. I'll always fall in love with that. And whether it's science fiction or, there's a reason why I follow all the NASA social media accounts, because I could watch pictures of infrared images of the sun orbiting all day long and just look at them and go, man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
so much science went into it just to create that. It's fantastic. So unfortunately, we got to wrap up the podcast. But hold on, I'm going to give you a chance. Unfortunately, we got to wrap up the podcast. However, you have any last thoughts, Pete?
Well, he talked about the ending questions.
Yes,
I think
would you
it's
like
more
to give him that
appropriate.
opportunity?
Yeah.
No.
You going to let Mary
Time
do it
to
too?
be ambushed.
Yeah, Mary.
Wait, I didn't
Maybe
think of anything. I wasn't
Well,
ready
we're
for
gonna
this.
let Vinny do it first, and then he'll hit you
All right,
too.
I have a
Okay,
question,
good.
but it's an easy question.
Okay, you first, Mary.
Actually, no, I should probably make it harder. You go.
Okay.
I need to think about this for a minute.
That should
Okay,
be
Vinny,
fun.
so do you have your own little life quote, life advice that you can share with our listeners?
I dare you to say no.
No, I do. Right. I should prepare for this a little better. I'm going to go back to. This is going to take me a minute to explain. Sorry. Something I noticed in grad school. Okay, something in grad school. So we would have to give presentations sometimes. Every Friday, a student would have to give presentations to the whole department, and all the other professors would be there, and all your advisors would be there, and they get to ask you questions or have criticisms or something, right? And some students, when they present, they would seem like so nervous and jumpy and defensive. And some students would seem so casual and relaxed and happy to be there. And I realized after a while that the difference between those kind of presentations wasn't necessarily the quality of the work. It didn't tie in that exactly. It was more the attitude of the presenter. And so what was happening was some presenters, when they're up there talking about their work, if someone had a criticism that was pretty good, they would feel like it was an attack on them, right? And they'd say, this is my work. I put this into this. I must be bad at this. And it would hurt them and shut them down a little bit. Other people, someone would suggest something, they think to themselves, oh my goodness, I didn't think of that. That's a great idea. My product's gonna be better now because they got that question. So I'm happy about that. So my advice is when you, and I'm working this for myself too all the time, when you receive criticism or if someone finds a way to make something you're working on better, be happy that that work is improving instead of being sad that you missed something. That's how I got through grad school.
I would agree with that completely.
That is a mouthful that I need to keep in mind.
I have to come up with a pithier way to say that story, but keep that in mind. Like, someone points something out, a way to make something of yours better, be happy it's better, not sad that you failed to see how it could have been better.
Or defensive. I get defensive.
Yeah, it's totally natural.
For
It's
no
totally
other
natural.
reason than like ego. You
Because
know
you
what
feel
I mean?
self-conscious, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's
That's
because
great
you have a
advice,
natural
Vinny.
inclination to feel like you're being attacked, when in reality you're not. I mean, it took me, I say that as a guy who it took me 20 years to become open-minded to people, editing my work.
Yeah.
I even said, I had a boss once, I said, I just started working for her and she was editing something I put together and there was all this red on the paper.
Bleeding red.
And I go, and I look at it, I go, God, I hate the color red. And you know what? God bless her. And because of her, I do this now. God bless her. She went out and bought green pens and used green instead. And I have never been so appreciative of anything in my life. So now when I edit the paper, I edit somebody else. I always do it with
I
green.
did notice that.
Yep,
You
that's
guys
why I
use
use a green pen.
That's interesting.
Yes, because so they won't be filled with hate the way I was. So Mary, did you remember what your question was?
Yes, but I feel like you probably have more than one. What's your favorite book, Vinny?
Oh, boy.
Or if you want to break it down by genre, that's fine too.
Man. Oh, wow.
I'm
so not
picturing
prepared for
some
this.
giant, 2,000-page textbook about genetics.
No, that's way too boring. So we like fiction or nonfiction. Okay, so I'll do a couple.
It's a tough one. I know.
My favorite book of short stories is A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor.
Oh, yeah.
So I read that book. I've still recovered from the first time I read it, probably 10 years ago. I hadn't read any of her other books because I'm saving them because she didn't have a very long career. She died pretty young. She wrote a certain number of books, and they're so good and so powerful that I'm saving them. She's a Catholic writer, very real, very aware of the brokenness of humanity. So good. I recommend those stories. They'll knock
Is
you
it
back a
one
little bit. They're
book
great.
of short stories?
Yep, and the first short story is named the title of the book, Short Stories. A Good Man is Hard to Find. It's pretty intense, but it's
Ain't
really
that
great.
the truth?
Everyone should read it. It's fiction, but it's really good and has a lot of truth about the world.
Oh, I agree.
I gotta
I
look
second
into that for
They're
sure.
very good. Flannery O'Connor is one of my. That's awesome.
Awesome.
What else?
What else? So nonfiction, I'm on a Catholic podcast, but I didn't plan this. Anything by Thomas Merton. I love reading what Thomas Merton has written.
That's Kevin Hickey's favorite author.
Yeah, he's really good. And I shouldn't say anything. There's so much, though. He has an autobiography called The 7-Story Mountain, which is the kind of thing you can just read a chapter and then put down for a month or something, because there's so much to think about.
Yeah.
No wonder Kevin is the way he is. Have you ever talked
really
about
great.
Merton?
No, I haven't.
He has told
let's
me,
see.
wow, okay, you guys got to talk about that.
Great.
Okay. Well, now we really do have to close out the
Sorry, I went
podcast.
so
But
long.
no. Hey, listen, I'm very happy when we go over an hour. So thank you very much. And I always think
Has it really been that long?
it has been 1 hour and 4 minutes. You guys did a great job chit chatting. I'm very proud of all of you. But we got to wrap it up because I got to go to a meeting. But thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope you're all having a good week while Pete and I are away. And we will catch you all in a week from now. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.